Good morning, and thank you for being here. The media plays a vital role in what we do, not just for the purposes of covering it, but also helping the community understand that when they send up a flare, we will respond. And also dissuading potential bad actors, those thinking about doing bad things, letting them know that we're in their midst and they will be held accountable. So God willing, your presence here today will deter future crime. I'd like to introduce the people that are with me. Art Peralta, Special Agent in Charge, Atlanta Field Office, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. A finer lawman and leader I have never worked with. Linwood Woody Reeves, Resident Agent in Charge of the Savannah Field Office for the ATF. John Melvin, Assistant Director, Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Michael Carlson, Deputy Director, Legal Division, Chief Counsel and Ethics Officer for the GBI, and also a representative here today of the Georgia Gang Investigators Association. Jamie Jones, Special Agent in Charge, Southeast Regional Drug Enforcement Office of the GBI. Ashley Brown, Chief, Pooler Police Department. Bobby Banks, GBI Special Agent. Tom Crawford, ATF Special Agent. Greg Galuli Jr., Assistant United States Attorney, one of the team of prosecutors and support staff working on these cases, including Criminal Chief Carl Kanoki, pardon me, Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force Coordinator Marcelo Mateo, and Assistant United States Attorney Jennifer Kirkland. Many thanks to them for joining us. I often say that it takes a network to fight a network, and today's announcements are a powerful example of a network of good guys taking down gang-related criminal conspiracies trafficking drugs into our communities. Those in law enforcement will tell you that very few investigations fit into a neat little box, completely wrapped up with an arrest or two. Instead, most of them lead to evidence of other crimes and additional investigations. That's certainly the case here today. 2 years ago, in November 2018, we told you about the major drug trafficking conspiracy in Operation Vanilla Gorilla that represented the largest ever takedown of the notorious violent white supremacist street gang, the Ghostface Gangsters. That operation sent 43 felons to federal prison, and a related investigation, Operation Who's Laughing Now, sent another 19 felons to prison, 64 individuals. Those operations were a resounding success. But the investigations didn't end there. Information learned during those cases shed light on other criminal activities, leading a multitude of local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to coordinate parallel Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, or OCDF, operations. Crackdown 1 and 2 in Operation Stranded Bandit. That's why we're here today. And even though today's announcement marks a major milestone in these investigations, we know that there are still more threads to pull and more leads to follow. The United States District Court grand jury recently returned sealed indictments in 3 separate cases, United States versus Robinson et al., which we refer to as Operation Crackdown 1. This 24-count indictment charges 17 individuals with participating in a criminal conspiracy to possess and distribute methamphetamine, heroin, and cocaine in multiple counties in the Southern District. United States of America versus Davis et al., the second case, which we refer to as Operation Crackdown 2. This 9-count indictment charges an additional 8 defendants in the conspiracy. Third, United States of America versus Baker et al., or Operation Stranded Bandit. This is the largest of the 3 operations, with a 40-count indictment charging 35 defendants in a criminal conspiracy to possess and distribute large amounts of methamphetamine, along with cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, and Xanax. An additional 4 individuals related to these operations are charged in separate indictments, 1 for methamphetamine distribution and 3 others for firearms charges. 64 defendants. The 37 firearms charges among these cases are a key part of these investigations, particularly at a time when the Savannah area is plagued with an uptick in gun violence. With these operations, investigators seized at least 60 firearms, many of them assault-style weapons with high-capacity magazines, and many of them in the hands of previously convicted felons, who, by law, are prohibited from possessing firearms. Taken together, these indictments charge more than 60 defendants, many of them affiliated with criminal street gangs, including the Ghostface Gangsters, with participating in conspiracies that connected the cartels of Mexico to the coastal Georgia area, with coordination from leaders serving time in state prisons and using contraband cell phones to conduct illegal business. This conspiracy represented a marriage of convenience between multiple gangs who put aside their own rules and racial animosity in the pursuit of a common goal, making money by channeling poison into our communities. These gangs included such notorious organizations as the Chicago-based All Might Simon City Royals, La Raza, Sur 13, the Bloods, Vice Lords, Gangster Disciples, the Aryan Brotherhood, and others. Using their connections inside and outside of prison walls, with some of the conspirators recruited as they passed through the Georgia Department of Corrections Transitional Center here in Savannah, the gang-affiliated defendants and their co-conspirators traveled to Mexico, in some cases transporting firearms, bringing back kilos of drugs through Atlanta and into the Southern District of Georgia. Remember how I mentioned that information and investigation often reveals other criminal activity? Agents turned up leads expected to aid in the solving of a 2019 murder here in Chatham County. It was a home invasion case. They turned up other information and links to drug distribution by some of these defendants to subsequent overdose deaths. The defendants in these cases have been making their initial court appearances, and there is still a tremendous amount of hard work to be done. But today I would like to applaud the courageous law enforcement personnel who sacrificed their time, their safety, and often their lives to identify, infiltrate, and dismantle these criminal organizations that threaten the safety and security of all of us. This includes the ATF, the GBI, the DEA, the Savannah Chatham Counter-Narcotics Team, the Chatham County Police Department, along with the FBI, U.S. Marshals, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the Georgia Department of Community Supervision, the Department of Corrections, sheriff's offices from Effingham, Bryan, Jones, Clayton, Liberty, Chatham, Long, Glenn, and Wayne counties, and police departments from Pooler, Savannah, Richmond Hill, Pembroke, Hinesville, and Glenn County. It should be abundantly clear that our network is bigger, stronger, and faster than the gang's network. And with our outstanding law enforcement partners, we will continue to relentlessly pursue these criminal conspiracies on behalf of the good people of our communities, utilizing the best practices as taught to us by Georgia's Gang Investigators Association. We'll now have remarks from some of those here whose agencies were involved in these operations. First, I would call on Assistant Director, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, John Melvin.
Thank you, U.S. Attorney Christine. Evil exists, and in order to tackle it, we need leaders who will identify it and aggressively pursue it. Attorney Christine has been that leader for the Southern District. The Georgia Bureau of Investigations wants to thank him, not only for this operation, but for the over 800 OSADEF cases that he's brought over the past 3 years. The ramifications of putting these people in prison will have ripple effects for generations to come. Thank you. This operation is one of the operations that should be a model for the United States of America. Instead of the ineffectual piecemeal prosecution of singular defendants, U.S. Attorney Christine and Greg Gillooly have gone after the evildoers en masse. By taking them out en masse, using the crimes that the Southern District and the indictments that the Southern District has brought against them, we are able to shut down entire organizations. So again, thank you. Thank you for our cooperative agencies that are represented here, because we cannot do it with one agency, one agent, or one leader at a time. We need every single person here. So thank you, one and all. Thank you for the agents of the Georgia Bureau of Investigations who are putting their lives on the line, as well as every other agent with ATF, FBI, and our local police departments. Thank you. The final thing I'd like to say is we need more tools. On the state level, we need expanded venue provisions for our gang statutes so that we are not limited on a county-by-county basis of bringing gang charges, the most effective statute that we have on the books. On the federal level, we need a federal gang statute that allows leaders like U.S. Attorney Christine and Greg Galuli to bring federal charges, federal gang charges against these people. Evil exists. We cannot put our head in the sands. But what we can do is to give our men and women the tools necessary and give those leaders who are willing to take the fight to them the capability to be able to do that. I'd like to call on Deputy Director and GBI Legal Counsel Michael Carlson, Vice President of the Georgia Gang Association.
Thank you, Assistant Director Melvin, United States Attorney Christine, members of the media, and of course, courageous men and women of law enforcement and prosecution who are here today. 3 years ago, almost to the day, United States Attorney Bobby Christine delivered his inspirational address at his investiture ceremony here in Savannah. For those who were fortunate enough to hear United States Attorney Christine's rousing words, his pledge was clear: make the Southern District safer. Since then, U.S. Attorney Christine's leadership has produced outstanding collaboration among federal, state, and local law enforcement prosecution partnerships. This has provided proof positive of U.S. Attorney Christine's unswerving commitment towards that goal of making the Southern District safer. And there is no conceivable way to accomplish that objective without doing exactly what United States Attorney Christine has done. And that's not only for the Southern District. What I'm about to say applies to Georgia and the United States. What Bobby Christine did was what we need, truly, to not only make the Southern District, but Georgia and all of our country safer. That is prioritizing criminal street gang investigations and prosecutions. Now, without commenting on any specific case or even these particular operations, we know Assistant U.S. Attorney Galuli is going to do that shortly. Let's take a look at exactly the crisis of gang crime and gang criminality, gang membership and recruitment that faces our nation, briefly, to give an idea of the background here and what exactly law enforcement and prosecution here in Georgia and across the country faces. There is simply no more existential public safety threat confronting the United States than criminal street gangs. A 2011 federal study tells us that there are 33,000 criminal street gangs in the country, sporting over 1.4 million members. Academic research imparts that the actual numbers of gang membership might actually more than double government estimates. Our federal government confirms extensive gang involvement in the very crimes our law-abiding citizens fear most: murder, illegal narcotics distribution, human trafficking, just to name a few. But there's another way that gangs victimize. And while it may not be a feature of these particular operations in terms of the indicted charges, we know that gangs recruit. Gangs expand their criminal influence through expanding their memberships. And sociological research tells us that gang recruiting only stops when gangs face prosecution. For years, the Georgia Gang Investigators Association has advocated for implementing best practices to combat the crisis of gang crime gang victimization, and gang recruitment. What do some of those best practices entail? Well, take a look at what we're seeing here today. Omnibus indictments, comprehensive charging instruments that seek to stop and dismantle the entire criminal organization as opposed to prosecuting single or a few gang members one at a time. Omnibus indictments of that fashion form the essential component of a successful anti-gang strategy. Indicting in that fashion also provides an opportunity to fully apprise juries of the totality of the criminal gang's activities. Unifying, as we see here today, federal, state, and local anti-gang efforts not only increases the strength of anti-gang initiatives, but it displays for all to see, as U.S. Attorney Christine has said again and again and again, proof that there are larger and more powerful networks opposing gangs than promoting them. Recognizing these realities and embracing best practices is highly impactful. Just last month, reports tell us of a major gang task force operation in the western United States. Very quickly after that operation was up and running, there was a 50% drop in murders and 50% drop in shootings in that very community. Those gangs are no longer victimizing or recruiting as they had before. U.S. Attorney Christine's pioneering work in directing far-reaching anti-gang efforts and operations like these deserves tremendous credit. For those of us who know Bobby Christine, we recognize that this is part of a long-standing, heartfelt, and career devotion to protecting the innocent and his deeply held dedication to public safety. Criminal street gangs represent the single greatest public threat facing this nation, bar none. They can, however, be stopped and dismantled through the type of leadership exhibited here by United States Attorney Christine and the dedication and efforts of the law enforcement personnel and prosecution partners that are here before us. Thank you for your dedication, thank you for your sacrifice, and thank you for making us all safer.
Assistant Director Melvin, Deputy Director Carlson, thank you very much for your words. Special Agent in Charge Peralta, thank you for being with us. All law enforcement, I'd ask Greg Galuli to come stand with me as I ask the media here shortly if you have any questions. We'll take those questions and we'll answer them to the extent we're able to. Like I told you, we're still pulling strings, and so there's still investigation going on. But I will tell you that you know, leaders and offices come and go, but the folks who have their shoulder to the wheel and make it happen, folks like Greg Galuli, are enduring members of this office. We're one of the few districts that DOJ reports that the crime rate in every single municipality continues to fall since 2017, even through this tumultuous summer. Now you see upticks in particular types of crime here and there, but as an overall crime rating, every municipality in the Southern District over the last 3 years has seen their crime rate fall. And it's because of work of the assistant district attorneys and assistant district attorneys, the solicitors general, state, local, federal prosecutors, empowered by law enforcement at the state, local, and federal level that get that done. A dropping crime rate means there are untold members of this community who were not victimized, who otherwise would have been. And it's men and women like Greg Galuli, enduring workers in this office who make that happen. And we're blessed to have them. If you have any questions, we'll try to answer them to the extent we're allowed.
U.S. Attorney Christine,
yes, sir.
Question from you. You mentioned at the beginning of your remarks 2019 home invasion murder here in Chatham County. Can you detail exactly where and what that was?
Greg, are you familiar with where? Off the top of my head, I am not. I know that when Greg and his team uncovered that information, they immediately got it in the hands of the appropriate prosecutors locally, and law enforcement knew right away what they had stumbled across. And I say stumbled, they didn't stumble across it. When they pull these strings, they do it very deliberately. It's not like a drunk guy at a bar telling a story. These fellows, these men and women know what they're going after. So to answer your question, I do not, but law enforcement got it in the local prosecutor and law enforcement hands as soon as they came into contact with it. that was your question as well?
You mentioned also, we heard the remark that a major operation out west led to a significant drop in violent crime. Could we see something like that with this latest operation here locally?
Absolutely. And you don't have to wait for that drop to occur. You can look at an operation led by Mr. Gillooly in Kyler, Brownsville. Probably the biggest blessing of having worked with this office is I can't walk between here and the courthouse every week without being stopped and someone saying, thank you for that Kyler, Brownsville operation. 3 years later, the number of shootings in that 4-block neighborhood was offensive. And after Greg and his team, with local and federal assistance, went through, identified the lawbreakers, and removed them, it dropped precipitously. So you have examples right here in Savannah of that.
You talked about just gangs in general. How big of a problem is it, and how much does this particular operation solve that?
So I will tell you what the data suggests. We are data-driven. We don't do things on a hunch. Data suggests that up to 90% of all criminal activity in America is gang-related. You're saying, what? I will tell you that in my tenure, it has been proof positive. Human trafficking, slavery by any other name, perpetrated, facilitated, marketed by gangs. Distribution of drugs, illegal firearms, any manner of enforcement mechanism, intimidation. These are all gang-related. These are federal studies that tell us 90% of all crime is gang-related. I believe it to be true. I'm not that smart, but the people who are tell us that the data bears it out. Conversely, if we take our attention away from criminal gang activity and place it elsewhere, I would suggest to you, you will see what we saw in the previous decade, which was a spike in criminal activity. There's a correlation between fewer prosecutions and more criminal activity. Reasonable minds can differ, but again, I'm not that smart. The data tells us when you have a 17% drop in incarceration rates and a 20% rise in crime coincident with one another, there's a correlation.
Question first, this is Director Melvin, actually. You mentioned needing tools still at
Yes,
the
sir.
state and federal level. What's it going to take to get those?
At the state level, it'll take the legislature expanding the venue provision for our gang statute, very similar to our RICO statute. Under that statute, if we have one act in Chatham County, that we could take jurisdiction under the RICO statute of any act that is done within the state and outside of the state. Unfortunately, our gang statute does not have that provision, and our gangs do not recognize county lines. So if we could tweak the venue provision of our gang statute so that if Sir 13 or La Raza or Ghostface Gangster commits an act in Chatham County, we can take anything they've done across the state, bring it here in Chatham County, and hold them accountable. Federally, we do not have an anti-gang statute. We need federal legislation because gangs are not respecting our state lines. They're not respecting our national borders. This case right here involves transnational gangs operating within Chatham County, and those are the things that we need to stop.
Any movement at the state level?
Our governor, and we talked about leaders, our governor is one of those leaders, and as much as U.S. Attorney Christine has taken the fight, Governor Brian Kemp has taken the fight to the gangs, and he has been a big proponent of expanding the venue provision for our gangs. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, some of these leaders will stick around. I think some of them are willing to speak with you. I'll give you that opportunity and I'll get out of your way. Thank you for telling this story, not only to let the good folks know that the cavalry's arrived, but also to let those who are scratching their chin, thinking about committing criminal activity, that we are operating in their midst and we will bring them to justice. Thank you.